This is Dean with Slate Companies, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through the interface of SSD5 Free and show you how to get up and running quickly and easily. After installing SSD5 Free, the first thing you're going to want to do is create a new software instrument track in your DAW and load up the SSD5 sampler. Now let's take a walk through the interface of SSD5 Free. On the left, we have the navigation buttons to take us to different sections of SSD5. As we click through these buttons, we see that the main interface shows different controls and sections. Now let's start with the Construct Kit section. This is where we can select a kit preset and load our instruments. Let's double-click this kit to load it up. We see that the kit begins loading each instrument below. Now, if you want to use your own samples, simply click on the Samples button, click Add, and then locate the folder on your hard drive where your samples exist. Then simply drag them from the window down to the pads. These can then be triggered by MIDI notes, and later in this video, we'll look at how to choose which MIDI notes trigger these samples by using the mapping section. Next, let's take a look at the Edit Instrument section. This allows us to edit the sound of the instrument, as well as the individual microphones. We can adjust the volume of each microphone here, like this. We can also adjust the tuning and even the volume envelope for total control over our drum sounds. One of the coolest features of SSD5 is the snare mode option. We can choose between classic and rimshot mode. Classic mode reacts as you would expect, with the normal snare drum samples being played back with different velocities. However, rimshot mode means that when a note is played at the top velocity of 127, instead of triggering a snare center hit, it will trigger the rimshot sample of the snare drum. This is a great way to make the performance even more dynamic and lifelike. Let's take a look at the mixer section. This is where we can find the perfect mix and blend between the different instruments we have loaded. We can adjust the volume with the faders, pan with the pan knobs, we can solo and mute individual tracks, and we can even flip the phase of an individual track. This is an easy visual way to get a great drum mix. Next, let's look at the mapping section. This is especially useful if you're using a special MIDI controller, like an eDrum kit or drum pads, and you want to be able to remap the MIDI notes to trigger specific samples. The best way to do this is to go to the Input Converter section and simply drag the sample you want to trigger on the right to the note that you want to trigger that sample on the left. Now, E-1 will trigger our tom rim click since we moved it. Now let's look at the Grooves section. Here we can load up professionally pre-programmed MIDI grooves and use them to create lifelike drum parts. Simply choose a library, a category, and a groove, and you can even audition it using the 4 buttons in the bottom bar. We can adjust the playback speed and the dynamics with these controls as well. Once we dial in the groove to exactly how we want it, we can drag it onto the MIDI track in our DAW. We can then combine multiple parts together to create a full song if we want to. Now let's look at the Settings section. This is where we can adjust certain settings for SSD5, like if we want to use Kit View or use Cells View for our drums. We can select the base directory for our SSD5 library and adjust settings designed to optimize performance of SSD5. It's recommended to leave them at the default positions, but it's very helpful to have the option to adjust them if needed. Now, once you've dialed in a kit that you like, you can save the kit as a preset and recall it anytime with the Save Kit button. You can also clear the current settings and start from scratch with the Clear Kit button. So that is an overview of SSD5 Free. It's an incredibly powerful drum sample software. If you have any further questions, please visit slatesupport.com.